The Deep South's oldest rivalry is this weekend, Auburn against Georgia, as Georgia takes the trip down Interstate 85 to take on the Tigers, who are looking for some confidence, anything they can find before playing against Georgia. We're talking about that and more with two guests here on The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Welcome into another college football preview. Crowded Booth, Palmer Thombs, Will Maness. Just talking beforehand, this ought to be a fun show, a pretty fun show. Talking about the Dogs, the Tigers, who get ready to kick off 3:30 Eastern CBS kickoff. I will be honest, guys. I was a little disappointed. I understand that CBS loves that Auburn Georgia game, but I was really hoping to get a 3:30 kickoff one, so I could drive back from Oxford all the way down back to Baton Rouge, and now I've got to stay another night in some godforsaken city in the state of Mississippi. So there's there's that. No, we're staying in
On the
Jacksonville.
other hand, I'm happy that this is a 3:30, 2:30.
You get to go right back home.
I am going right back home.
I wish it was a night game just because Jordan here at night give Auburn more of anything, because Auburn needs all the help they can get.
Yeah, it's we were talking about this last night on the live show, Palmer. Just poor Georgia. I mean, man, they have just struggled so much, with inferior competition. A defense that is just only 17th best total defense in the country this season. They're still the number one scoring defense, and they've only outscored their opponents 166-45 this season. So it's all gone wrong for the team in Athens. But
only averaging 41 points per game.
Yeah, it's
fire
just,
Mike Bobo.
Yeah, it's just a fire Mike Bobo season. But seriously, Palmer, we kind of take a look at this game. This is a road test for Georgia. It's Carson Beck's true first road test. How much are you looking into that, and how much does that come into play? What Will kind of alluded to, still going to be a hostile atmosphere. The Auburn fans are going to get up and try to, get into the head of Carson Beck.
Yeah, I do think that this is going to be an interesting tell about him. And I think we're going to learn a lot about this team and him specifically on Saturday with how he responds. If they come out the same way that they did against South Carolina, and there's all those Auburn fans down their neck and making life difficult for Georgia players, how do they respond? Are they able to regroup and get back together and get it rolling again, or does what hit the fan? I'm interested to see here, because I do think that Kirby has confidence in Carson Beck, in the way that he has described him basically as this guy that doesn't really go up and down. He's kind of emotionless, and at times I think fans have questioned, does this guy really care? Does he care that he's not playing all that great? No, I don't think he does, because I think that he knows what he's capable of. And, I think that in a game like this, where you don't ride that emotional roller coaster, maybe it's a good thing that you've got an emotionless quarterback in Carson Beck.
Yeah. And Carson Beck being that guy that, I know he's technically your rival competition, but Jed May did a fantastic story on Beck, I guess, before the season, even kind of when it was kind of announced that Beck would be that guy, about just, what his mental makeup was. And I was talking with someone the other day that is close with another quarterback that came out of Florida in the same recruiting class, Jeff Sims, who has not had an equally career arc, I guess we could say, that Carson Beck is starting to have. So that being said,
I'm glad
Carson
you brought
Beck,
him up, Bryce.
Yeah,
the Georgia Tech fans are already not going to be happy if they're watching this video and you just stuck the dagger into them.
The dagger into him. We like to do that, but they still come out. It's just
they don't
this
like me.
thing.
Now they're not going to like you, Bryce. Now they're just not going to tune in.
Yeah, and I'm rocking the Mercer shirt today, so it is, it is what it is. That being said, I just found this out, and I just looked at this. Last year in Week 5, Georgia struggled on the road against Missouri. So, Will, I'll throw it to you. We all watched that game. Missouri was a team that I think really played. I think it's safe to say played above themselves and what they were maybe capable of. But defensively, they just really, really pressured Georgia and made life uncomfortable. Is that kind of the game plan? Like, what does Auburn have to do against Carson Beck in this offense to make them uncomfortable?
Yeah, it's got to be. You got to put pressure on Beck. Georgia comes in, questions in their running game. They still hadn't really figured out the running back, even though you and I have talked about it on the live shows a lot that Dylan Bell should be the starting running back. But you got to put pressure on Beck. He hasn't had that road test. It's his first road game, and it's going to be a electric environment. Even though Auburn comes in, off the loss to Texas A&M with the poor offense, but it's still going to be electric. Auburn fans always get up for Georgia. And Ron Roberts, he's really good at scheming up blitzes, and he really wants to put pressure on the quarterback, and that's what Auburn's got to do. They got to find a way to do it. As Pete wants to give his 2 cents, he thinks Auburn needs to press the quarterback too. But yeah, you got to put pressure on Carson Beck. You can't give him all day to throw. From what we've seen so far with Georgia's offense, they want to throw it, whether it's to get him in rhythm or it's because the question marks in the running game. So Georgia's going to try to air it out. Bobo likes to throw it. Auburn fans know him very well. He threw it a lot with Bo Nix at Auburn. He threw it a lot his first time at Georgia, had some really good quarterbacks. So Auburn, you got to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. You got to be able to get to the quarterback. Palmer, we kind of go back to the quarterback position on the opposite side with Auburn. It's really just not a stable position right now. Obviously, Robbie Ashford getting some run there. Will mentioned, and we had a commenter last night on the live show when we kind of took a look at this game saying, just run the triple option with Robbie Ashford, like if this thing doesn't pan out. That being said, is this a game where, one, and we were going to ask you this, what is the status of Mykel Williams coming into this game? And are these guys going to be able to kind of pin their ears back? What kind of confidence does it give a defense when you got a bunch of quarterbacks there that are not really confident in the ability to move the ball efficiently?
Yes, I do think that Mykel Williams will be available for this one. Was dealing with a little bit of a sickness last week. And, we saw 2 weeks ago for the South Carolina game, Marvin Jones Jr. was out with an illness is what Kirby called that one. Sickness, illness, what's the difference? Up for debate. But, that being said, Marvin was back a week later. We expect Mykel Williams to be back as well. And, that's big because I think and look, for this Georgia defense as a whole, while we're on the note of injuries, I'm expecting Javon Bullard back. And so you get 2 All-American caliber players back in those 2 guys, one on the front line, one on the back end. And that's big for this Georgia defense because they played their best football, that second half of that South Carolina game, albeit Bullard wasn't available then. But, when Williams was bringing pressure and Georgia was bringing pressure, I think that this team understands that, and Spencer Rattler is a significantly better quarterback than anything Auburn has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's up for debate. I think what is up for debate, it would be his status as the best quarterback in the SEC. Bryce, your LSU folks may have something to say about that. Yeah. But
I think they would agree with you, Palmer.
Yeah, LSU fans don't love Jaden Daniels for some reason. But anyways.
That being said, I think that Georgia has an opportunity here to bring pressure. That's a great way to get a home crowd out of a game. Versus at home, you're trying to get a home crowd into the game, and keep them in it. On the road, you're trying to get them out of it. And like we've said a couple times here already, expecting this one to be a great environment, a great atmosphere, and those Auburn fans to show up. That being said, I do think that Georgia is going to be able to get after the quarterback, cause havoc there, and force Auburn, an Auburn offense that's been pretty one-dimensional all season long. If you force them to be even more one-dimensional, that does not bode well for their chances.
Yeah, a couple of numbers to throw along with that as we go back to you, Will. On the ground, Tigers are 26th in rushing in the country, 126th ranked passing attack. So the definition of being one-dimensional. You mentioned it, Will.
How many FBS teams? 133?
131, I think.
130. It's like low 130s. I mean, so they are a cellar dweller when we talk about, being a team to pass the football. That being said, Will, I know this goes without saying, and you mentioned this last night of the live show. You can't fall behind if you're Auburn. Like you've got to be able to be nice in the turnover margin in this game. What is the recipe for an upset if they're going to be able to do this?
Well, number one is control the line of scrimmage on both sides. It's a tall task against Georgia. They've got 5-star after 5-star on both lines. And Auburn does not. Auburn's got a group of 5 players on both lines of scrimmage. But Auburn, you mentioned they run the ball great. That's what they're going to have to run the football at an elite level. I mean, they may have to find a way to get 300 yards on the ground because we know they're not going to get any through the air. And there's a lot of factors that play into that, why Auburn can't throw. The quarterback position. The receiver position has been a huge letdown with all the new bodies coming in there. There was a lot of expectation based on Hugh Freeze's track record of having elite receivers at Ole Miss, thinking he has, everybody thinks he has an eye for receivers. Hasn't worked out so far at Auburn for receivers or quarterback. So they're going to have to run the football. They're going to have to find some way to run against that Georgia front. But defensively, the good news is that this defense creates turnovers. I think they're tied for first in the SEC in takeaways, but they're also first in fumbles lost. So Auburn's got to take care of the football. They can get takeaways. It'll help if they can put pressure on Beck and force him to throw before he's ready. Auburn's got playmakers in the secondary. DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett came back from injury against Texas A&M. Jalen Simpson moved to safety this year, and he was the first Auburn player in 16 years to have 3 interceptions in the first 3 games. So Auburn knows they've got playmakers. They can take the ball away, but they've really got to take care of it.
Yeah, no, you mentioned obviously they're up there in forcing turnovers, but they're not too good in the turnover margin category so far this season.
I think the turnover margin is right at 0. I think Auburn's given it away as many times they've taken it.
That's something you don't want that to happen.
That's not a good recipe.
No, not a good recipe. We talk about recipes for success for Auburn. Palmer, is there a worry amongst Georgia fans, maybe amongst some of the folks that I don't know how much you really worry about it, but is there a worry in this sense of, if they start off slow in this game, let's just say it's like 13-10 Auburn at halftime. One, what type of momentum does Auburn get to carry into, and how many more times can you afford to start slow if you're Georgia and get away with it?
With the schedule that they play, probably more than you would think. But that schedule is looking tougher and tougher by the week. I mean, Kentucky and Florida have a big game this weekend, and the winner of that has a really good chance of facing up against Georgia with if Kentucky wins, they'll be undefeated. If Florida wins, they've got a really good shot of being a 1-loss team coming into that game. Missouri has gotten off to a great start. Ole Miss and Tennessee are both still ranked. So right now, as things stand, in late September, Georgia has 4 straight games that are against ranked opponents. And with 2 of those being away from home. So I don't know how much you can, mess around in the first quarter and get away with it. I think that this is where, it could cost them on the road. You can do it at home and get away with it when you're playing UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB. I don't know that you can get away with it on the road. And for Auburn, having talked to some folks that cover that side of things, that's the key. You can't get behind super early, because this crowd is going to want to stay in this game. They are going to want to be engaged for an extended period of time. They don't want to be leaving this game at halftime and looking at a scoreboard that has Georgia up big. They want to be focused on Georgia-Auburn football late into this game and with their team having a chance to win. And so, Auburn's going to bring everything that they can in that early on to keep this one close. And Georgia's got to execute, against pressure. They're going to have pressure put on them, not only by Auburn and Auburn fans, but, the situations that they're going to be in. I think that, they probably feel some pressure already, from their own fans of like, well, hey, why are you guys not starting quickly? Why are you guys not starting fast enough? I mean, you look at the stats, they have been outstanding in the third quarter, outscoring opponents. They haven't let an opponent score in the third quarter. So it's a wide margin that they are, up by in that third quarter. Why can you not do that in the first quarter? That's something that everybody is asking. So all that being said, it's important that they do. play well in the first quarter and get control of this game early, because the longer that you let an underdog hang around, the more hope that they have, especially when you're on the road and that underdog is at home.
Well, there's a recipe. We've seen it before, Bryce. We mentioned it on the live show. We were in the building for that 2017 game. Now, this Auburn team is far from that 2017 team.
Yeah.
But Auburn got off to a fast start. The crowd was in it, and I think the crowd really was the difference in that game. Similarities in that game. It was Jake Fromm's first big road game.
Yeah, he had played at Notre Dame.
Oh, true. He was at Notre Dame.
True.
But it was his first season as a starter. I mean,
right.
First season in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So some similarities with the quarterbacks. Auburn has to get to a fast start. We've seen it before. That game is still fresh in Auburn's fans' minds. They haven't forgotten about it. If this team gets off to a hot start and the crowd stays in it for the whole half, 3 quarters, Auburn's going to have a shot.
And the other thing that I would throw in there is turnovers. I mean, Fromm had a fumble, didn't lose it, but 2 fumbles. They lost one from Mecole Hardman. You don't want to be in a situation, and Georgia put the ball on the ground twice last week, and paid for it because UAB scored right away. I mean, you put the ball around, you mess around with that, and it gives teams life, it gives teams hope, it gives teams opportunities, and so turnovers can be costly, especially in a situation like this.
Yeah, I think that, I don't expect Auburn to pull off this upset. I don't think all 3 of us really expect it, but we'll start with you, Will, in this as we kind of get into the last part and the predictions here. We've mentioned there's a recipe. We've mentioned kind of what's going to have to happen. My question is there a chance? Is there a world where you see Peyton Thorne or Robbie Ashford being able to command that offense well enough for them to be able to control tempo, control kind of the time of possession, and just being able to try to keep this game close? Like, do you see a scenario? Because I do think Auburn can play for 15 to 20 minutes. After that, I just haven't seen the consistency against a high-level opponent to feel very confident in them being able to play much beyond that.
Well, there is a world, because Peyton Thorne, something's been off with him since he's gotten to Auburn. Going back and watch that Texas A&M game, he had receivers open. He just wasn't throwing the ball. He wasn't getting rid of it. He was holding it too long. I don't know if his clock has been off since he's come to Auburn. I don't know if it's nerves because he doesn't want to screw up. I don't know. If everything goes right, if that light switch goes off in Peyton Thorne's head, Auburn's got a chance, and Auburn can move the ball. Their offense, he can run that offense. They can probably move the ball down the field and maybe score some points. But I don't see it happening. I mean, you've heard me say it. I'm pretty much out on Peyton Thorne. I don't think Thorne's the guy. I think Thorne has been a major letdown, and Auburn should just go to Robbie Ashford. But if you do that, then you're basically punting on the pass game, and you're just going to have to run it because Ashford is even more inconsistent.
So is Holden Gerner the answer? Post-bye?
I don't know. I mean, I liked what I saw out of Holden at the end of that A&M game. Those throws, he looked the game's out of hand, so there's really no pressure, but he looked confident in the pocket. Those were good, strong throws. Maybe there's something there. The coaches say he's got the best ball of anybody in the quarterback room, but when the lights come on, he's just off. It's nerves. He was that way as a freshman last year.
And I think listening to Hugh talk about it this week, because he got asked about it, I think it was the last question of his press conference. He said, look, if Holden is ever the guy, he needs reps. And he said it's on him to get him reps during the bye that's upcoming. And, there's a lot of things that he said he's going to be evaluating during the bye. That is certainly one of them.
Yeah. So I don't really expect Holden in this game unless it gets out of hand and he gets extended reps. But probably after that bye week is going to be your best shot if he's going to make a change at quarterback. I just think that the athleticism, the physical aspect to the run game that Robbie Ashford brings, he's better for this offense, at least right now.
Especially against this defense.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Georgia's the defense this year, I think the strength is in the secondary. That front seven's really good. They get after the quarterback too, but that secondary, they've got a lot of playmakers back there. You really may see all 3 quarterbacks in this game.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see as well. We mentioned 14.5 point spread. Will, is Georgia covering this, or can Auburn make this closer?
Yeah, I think Georgia's going to cover it. Best case scenario, putting my orange and blue glasses on, Georgia pulls away second half of the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, but Auburn does enough early to provide some optimism. That's my best case scenario, but yeah, I think Georgia's going to win this one pretty handily.
I don't necessarily disagree with you in the sense, like I mentioned earlier. I think Auburn can hang around in this game. I do think Georgia is going to have to figure some things out with the crowd noise, with the level. I don't. It would surprise me, Palmer, to see if Carson Beck comes out guns a blazing. One, that's just bad news for Auburn, but it's kind of bad news for the rest of the SEC because that feels like it's kind of been the missing link for this entire team. Does Georgia cover this? And kind of your final thoughts?
Yeah, I do think Georgia covers this, but I think it's one that's, a closer cover. I mean, that 14.5 number, you're thinking 17-point win is kind of that close cover. If you get to 21, you're more comfortable with it. But even then, it's still within a score. I don't see Georgia winning this one by, 4 scores.
That'd be surprising.
I would be surprised by that. And like you said, if they do that, which I think they are capable of doing, especially given the matchup here, if they do that and Georgia figures it out and puts together its best plan and plays its best game, you're right. It could be, bad news for the rest of the SEC in college football. I think that this is a big opportunity for them to, silence some of the critics, not because it would be a, huge win for the season, but it's their first big test. And that is the atmosphere of going on the road.
Yeah. And then obviously they go back home and face a Kentucky team, night game in Sanford Stadium. That, we'll know more about Kentucky coming out of this weekend, hosting Florida up there in Lexington. That's a game where, Palmer, I don't know if you caught any of the live show. I actually picked Florida to win that football game. I think Will picked Kentucky. So we were split on that. I think
I saw the line today is 1 point in favor of Kentucky.
Yeah, it's a coin flip game. I mean, that's going to be really, really fun to watch. So, that being said, I'm with you guys. I do think Georgia covers. I think we all kind of lean in the area. I'm going to say a 17-point win. And I think it's one of those where, this is still a rivalry game, although, they don't hate each other like a lot of people have said, but, I'll say this too, to that, because Palmer, obviously we're based out of Columbus. If you grew up in Columbus and you're a Georgia fan, you did hate Auburn. Like if you're an Auburn fan, you did hate Georgia. It's a lot of Georgia's rivalries to me tend to be where and when you grew up, like in what time period.
100%.
If you grew up near the Tennessee line, then you hated Tennessee. If you grew up in South Georgia, you hated Florida. And then vice versa, kind of, where we are in the Chattahoochee Valley over there in Columbus, 30 minutes from Auburn, you couldn't stand Auburn. So, it's a fun game.
And Atlanta throw in Tech as well.
Yeah, but you had to kind of grow up in the 90s, I guess, the 1990s or the 50s with Bobby Dodd to really have a hatred for Tech, I guess. Or John Heisman, back in the early 1900s, I guess you could say. So once again, continuing to throw shade, but that's absolutely fine. But hey, Paul, appreciate it as always, man. We're going to get you on next week to preview Kentucky and what should be a fun game. And really for you should be the most fun game you've covered yet to this season. How excited are you to kind of go on a road trip? You've been sitting in Athens for the past month?
Yeah. When was the last time I was the last time I was out of Athens might've been SEC Media Days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So middle of July.
Yeah.
Wow.
Middle of July. Cause I came back here and, I have been to Atlanta, but, outside of that, this is fun. I mean, look, I do enjoy making these road trips. Auburn is one of the most exciting atmospheres to watch a team play a football game in. Got some buddies of mine that hope to see this weekend. So I'm excited about it. I think that, again, it's a good opportunity, as somebody that covers Georgia, to learn a lot about Georgia.
Very true. Very true. Palmer, let the folks know whether they're listening or watching it on YouTube, where they can find your work if they want to read any of that stuff leading up into Saturday's game. Yeah,
head on over to Dogs HQ at Palmer Thombs. That's THOMBS on Twitter. Dogs HQ. We've got a ongoing big game special, 50% off for the year. So
I'll let you plug that. We work for rival companies, but I'll let you plug it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, ongoing big game special. So come check us out over at Dogs HQ.
Hey, if you're on Auburn Live, Palmer's got a big thread over there doing some
That too.
Q&A.
Yeah, chime
So,
in.
Yeah.
Let's hear your thoughts.
On the Kirby cut. Yeah, absolutely. Palmer Thombs, Will Maness, my name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for tuning in for this preview. Auburn against Georgia should be a fun one. Let us know down in the comments down below what you think the final score could be and what could happen in this football game. And I'm sure we'll get one or two comments that just have just a horrible word and then Palmer's name right next to it from some of the Tech fans that are subscribed to the channel. But we appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.